I arrived late enough to avoid the pre-ceremony chatter, but early enough to realize I wasn't wanted. The heat in Austin that day clung to skin like guilt. Sticky, unwelcome. I walked across the garden lawn, heels sinking into grass, and there it was, my place card. Bent. Sitting alone on a round table tucked awkwardly beside the restroom path. Not the family table. Not even the friend of the family table. Just me. The linen was the same, sure. But it was like putting lipstick on exclusion. The other tables sparkled under the spring sun, laughs, champagne, neatly folded napkins shaped like leaves. And mine? My napkin looked like someone had sneezed into it, then tried to smooth it out. Someone behind me whispered, "Did she gain more weight since the last family thing?" She always had trouble keeping a man, another chimed in, not low enough. Bless her heart. I sat down. Straight-backed. Smiling like I didn't hear. Like I hadn't spent years hearing versions of the same song. It's funny how family can make you feel invisible in plain sight. I scanned the faces around me, every smile looked polished, every gaze glanced right through me. They saw a caricature, not a woman. Photos started. I was summoned. I stood, posed, smiled. My cheeks ached from holding it together. Sometimes silence isn't peace, it's punishment. The toasts began right after the first dance. The groom's father, red-faced and trying to be charming, made a crack about how hard it is to find a bridesmaid dress that fits everyone. Laughter. Some polite. Some genuine. Then his wife leaned toward another guest but pitched her voice just right. "That's Rowena, right? The fat pig, useless one?" Laughter. Not loud, but there. Enough. I felt my spine freeze. Not from shock, this wasn't new. From the memory of every time I swallowed words because they told me keeping the peace was noble. My sister glanced at me. Just a flick of her eyes. Then she turned away. That part stung worse than the insult. I reached for my glass. My hands trembled, so I gripped the stem tighter. I wouldn't break here. I wouldn't let them win by watching me break. I turned back to my table. My napkin, crumpled like me, sat there still. I took a breath. Smoothed it out slowly, refolded into a crude version of the leaf everyone else had. The shape was sloppy, but it was mine. A server passed by, paused, smiled. Nice fold. Thanks, I said softly. It felt ridiculous. But real. That napkin became my anchor. The one thing I had control over in a place designed to shrink me. I pocketed it before dessert came. No one noticed. They rarely did. Later, as the music swelled and guests twirled under strings of lights, I excused myself. Just powdering my nose, I lied. Inside the restroom, I locked the stall and leaned into the mirror. My makeup was fine. But I stared hard anyway. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am the background noise in my own life. A tear welled. I blinked hard, furious at myself. Not today. A flash of memory, I was 6. Birthday cake. My sister got the bigger slice. Mom said, "Rowena doesn't need more sugar." Everyone laughed. I didn't. My reflection shifted. Softer sadness hardened. I stood straighter. I wasn't going to speak up tonight. But I was going to remember. Every face. Every word. Fireworks started just as I reached the parking lot. I watched them from beside my car, bright colors in the sky above a lake I didn't want to fall into. I didn't cry. In the driver's seat, I reached into my purse and pulled out the folded napkin. Set it gently on the dashboard. You wanted useless? I whispered. Watch me make your world fall. Back home, the dress still clung to my skin like a bad idea. I hadn't even kicked off my heels before flipping open the laptop on the kitchen counter. I stared at the screen, heart still stuck back in the wedding parking lot. Everyone else was probably dancing under fairy lights. Me? I was digging through old digital closets looking for ghosts. The email was still there, buried under junk, newsletters, and password reset links. An address I hadn't touched since I helped my sister's in-laws incorporate that little tech thing 5 years ago. Back then, it was just paperwork and trust. I was in charge of the filings, the signatures, the bank forms. Now, my name had vanished from everything, cleanly. Like it was never supposed to be there in the first place. They erased me on paper before they erased me at the table. I pulled up the contact list. Tom H. His email still worked. I used to grab him his weird brand muffins every Thursday morning before meetings. He liked them slightly overbaked. Said it gave them grit. People remember the way you made them feel, and I always made sure he got the muffins he liked. Subject line, Hi Tom. It's Rowena. Remember me? I wrote slowly. Chose my words like they were glass. I explained what I'd seen. Hinted I believed the financial transfers during my removal weren't clean. I didn't accuse. Not directly. I said, I know you're loyal. I'm not asking you to betray anyone. I'm just asking if my memory of the books was wrong, or if it was convenient for others to treat it that way. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I saved the draft. No. Not revenge. Just record correction. I hit send. The next morning, I dragged myself to work at the nonprofit like nothing had happened. Same gray building, same burnt coffee, same stack of grant applications waiting. But inside me, something had cracked open. I checked my phone every 10 minutes. Nothing. By lunch, I was rehearsing excuses not to care. It was a long shot anyway. He probably doesn't even check that account. Lies I fed myself to stay upright. I went home early. My apartment wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No pretenses. No staged dinners. Just peace. I used to resent its smallness. Now I saw it as freedom. Late afternoon, the notification buzzed. One line. Let's talk, off the record. Call me tonight. My hands went cold. I stared at it like it might vanish. Off the record meant wait. Meant risk. What does he know? I typed back, fingers trembling. Set a time. Closed the curtains. Sat in silence. At 8:12 sharp, the phone rang. Rowena? His voice was quieter than I remembered. Not weak, cautious. I'm here. He didn't waste time. You're not wrong, he said. But you're not safe either. I gripped the edge of the table. What do you mean? They used your name. On paperwork. Loans. Stuff you never signed, but it's you, Rowena. You're a placeholder partner on a few questionable lines of credit. I went still. He kept talking. You wouldn't know because the documents were funneled through entities you don't have access to anymore. But I remember. I kept some copies. And you're not the first they've done this to. It wasn't petty now. It wasn't family games. This was legal. Financial. Criminal? I'll send them. Scanned. Encrypted. Don't open them on public Wi-Fi. And Rowena act smart. They know how to protect themselves. I will. My voice didn't shake. But my heart pounded like it was clawing its way out of me. We hung up. I sat in the dark. The hum of the fridge was the only sound in the room. Across the street, diners laughed on patios. Clinking glasses. Waiters carrying plates. They think I'm harmless. Good. Let them. I turned to the laptop again. Opened a blank document. Title, Phase 1, Restoration. First word I typed, evidence. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I was awake. I sat at my old kitchen table before dawn, the screen casting pale blue light across the room. Everything else around me was still, the house quiet, the city just stirring. I pulled open the encrypted folder Tom had sent and stared at the files. Dozens of PDFs, doc_1099_SCEDC_amend, third-party loan initials removed, shellcode transfer _2018. My name appeared in 3 contracts. Illegally included. At that moment, the suspicion I'd held for years sharpened into truth. They didn't just insult me. They tried to bury me. I needed space. So I told my boss I needed a mental health day. He raised an eyebrow but nodded. That afternoon I gathered a legal pad, 2 pens, and drove to the downtown public library. I settled at a research computer, punched in vendor names from those contracts. The names matched those vendors my father had once warned me about. You can't trust people who treat waitstaff badly. It leaks into everything they touch. I must have blinked twice before the memory hit me, the diner with Dad, his voice low but steady. I was younger then, oblivious to the pattern. Now I understood. At the wedding, my sister had looked away when the joke hit me, the one about the dress, the one I'd heard 100 times before. That silence? It wasn't negligence. It was complicit. I tapped one of the records and watched the ledger open. Placeholder partner, R. Maddox. Loan issued, funds transferred, delinked. I leaned back. My breath steadied. This wasn't erasure, it was strategic fraud, built to hide the truth and bury my identity. Later I stepped into a corner cafe with the contract list still open on my tablet. I drafted an email to a former classmate who ran a blog about financial malpractice. Used a throwaway account, Anonymous Whistle Pig 88. Yes, it was in reference to the insult from the wedding, but I owned it. I attached the redacted documents and hit send. I watched the TV mounted above the bar. There it was, Groom's parents' company stepping into a sudden internal audit. My tip had lit something. A shot across the bow. The cafe door swung open, the Dallas breeze following in. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. Too early. I just felt the hinge of the door shift. I moved out of the center, into the margin. Until I was ready to claim space. That evening, my phone buzzed. My sister Serena. Hesitant. Conflicted. Her voice cracked. Why are you stirring things up? I didn't argue. I asked, did you know they used my name? Did you ever think to ask? Silence hung. She muttered she assumed business ties ended years ago. Not right. Just assumed. I whispered into the line, I'm not doing this to divide us. But I won't pretend to be silent just to keep us close either. I hung up. No anger. No tears. Just resolve. A ping on my computer pulled me away from the view of the street, my work email accessed from an unknown IP address. My nonprofit job had nothing to do with this. Someone reached into my life. I stared at the screen. I typed one line, "They're looking at me now." It's starting. No fear. Just awareness. At the window I watched the taillights of cars sliding past. I pulled the folded leaf napkin out of my jacket pocket and unfolded it. The shape was still imperfect, but I'd folded it on my own this time. I tucked it into the edge of my journal and closed it. I didn't know all the flames I had lit. But I knew enough. Because once something burns, there's no going back to the way it was. The elevator ride up to the law office felt longer than it should have. Not because of the floors, it was only on the 6th, but because I knew what I was walking into. I'd dress neat, blazer, slacks, flats. Not to impress. To be taken seriously. The receptionist smiled politely. I gave her my ID and the case reference Tom had helped me find. She nodded. One moment. Minutes later, I was led into a wood-paneled conference room that smelled like lemon oil and quiet arguments. A young attorney stepped in with a thin folder, placed it on the table, and sat across from me. "You said your name was Rowena Maddox," he began. "Here's what we pulled." He slid the folder forward. I opened it. There it was. My name, first, middle, last, typed clearly across the top line of a contract. A company I didn't even know existed until this month. The document claimed I was the primary equity partner. It was backdated. Sealed. Filed. My heart didn't race. My voice didn't shake. But inside, I felt a shift. I wasn't erased. I was rewritten. I asked when the contract was filed. He flipped a few pages. 5 years ago, he said. Who signed it? He hesitated. There's a signature block with your name, but no ink. Just an electronic entry. And it's spelled Rowena. 1 N. Is that legal? He looked even more uncomfortable. It's questionable. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just leaned back and said, "Thank you for confirming. Please send me copies of everything. I want a full audit. And I want my name cleared." He nodded slowly. "We'll find the next step." I walked out of there with the same clothes I walked in with, but something had shifted in me. I wasn't chasing answers anymore. I was naming offenses. The afternoon sun was sharp when I drove back to the house I grew up in. The library was quiet. The same green lamp still sat on the desk where my father used to read. My sister Lenora stood by the window, flipping through an old photo album like nothing was out of place. I dropped the printed contract in front of her. "You said we were equal. Did you know about this?" She looked at the paper, then at me. Her face didn't change much, but her fingers froze. "Rowena," she said softly, "this isn't about you." I stared at her. "It never was," she added, setting the album down. "Just let it go. Don't ruin things for everybody." There it was. No apology. No denial. Just that same hollow comfort they always used to hush me. I didn't raise my voice. I just picked up the contract and walked out. As I passed the hallway mirror, I caught my own reflection. Same outfit as the morning. Same ponytail. But my eyes had changed. Back at my apartment, I laid everything out on the table: printed contracts, Tom's email, financial notes, retirement fund screenshots. All of it. I opened a blank document on my laptop and typed the heading, Next Moves. Step 1, Audit. Step 2, Public Reveal. Step 3, Independence. I took a breath and picked up my phone. Bernadette Quinn. Old friend. Former mentor. Journalist with teeth. I left a voicemail. Bernie, it's me. I've got a story. Big one. You're gonna want it. Then I sat back and whispered to myself, they thought I was useless. Watch me become their auditor. This wasn't about getting even anymore. This was about getting clean. And I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. Rain rattled the window panes as I sat alone at the kitchen table. It was late afternoon, the light dimming. The storm outside seemed like it knew what was happening inside me. My sister hadn't called after the confrontation in the library. No, I'm sorry. No, are you okay? Just silence. Silence from someone you love doesn't feel like peace. It feels like a verdict. I opened the contract again. There it was, my name signed to something I didn't recall. But in the margin, a note in blue ink, crudely written, remove when audit clears. My fingers circled those words in red pen. They erased me emotionally before they erased me legally. I closed the notebook and stared out the window as thunder rolled across Austin. By the time the sun dipped behind clouds, I needed air. I rushed to the grocery store. It wasn't far, just a 10-minute drive, but it felt like stepping into some other world. In the cereal aisle I spotted an old college acquaintance. Our eyes met, then he turned away. Ignored me. I paused by the cookies and heard a small voice, Mom, is she the fat lady from the wedding video? The mother hushed the child, but not before the words drifted to me like a knife. They'd posted that video online. They'd laughed. I wasn't defended by anyone. Not in person. Not in comments. I grabbed a few items, paid quickly, and left. As I drove home, I thought about a quote I'd heard, the opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. At 38, I used to believe loyalty meant quiet suffering. Now I saw it meant something else. I didn't have to suffer in silence anymore. That evening, I sat on the hardwood floor in the living room surrounded by documents, printouts, journals. News clippings lay open, emails unanswered. Anger bore down, silver sharp, but what surprised me most was grief. I grabbed a photo, younger me, arm around my sister, both smiling. I ripped the paper. Shannon had told me once, don't let the past control your story. I whispered, I wouldn't do that to you. I collected the shreds, laid them out on the corkboard. I pinned legal trail notes, financial statements, anonymous leads. On one piece of cardboard I wrote, silence is their strategy. Mine is truth. I powered the laptop, typed a text to my old mentor, Bernie, if I ever had something real, you asked for it. I've got it. Meet me tomorrow at noon. No smiley face. No filler words. Just those lines. I poured tea, feeling the steam braid with the pounding in my chest. My fingers froze over the inbox. One email stood out, back off. Not everyone survives exposure. No address. No name. I hovered my finger over delete. Then I forwarded it, to my lawyer, to Bernie. If they thought fear still worked on me, they hadn't been paying attention. I sat back. Rain was lighter now. The leaf-folded napkin lay on the table beside me. This time I didn't fold it neatly. I left it slightly undone, unfinished business. I closed my laptop and stood. My reflection in the window showed a woman taller than I expected. Quiet, poised. Ready. I sat in my car, engine off, outside the event venue where Lenora's in-laws held court. The midnight air felt thick, humid, soaked with expectations. Street lamps glowed like old marquee lights on a tired theater. I glanced at the phone in my lap, one email notification, urgent matter, call immediately. From a major business partner of the groom's parents. They're playing chess while I've been playing checkers. I pressed my thumb against the screen and opened the message. I thought of the evidence I'd sent to Bernie and Tom, the one about the contract, the loans, the name spelled wrong. They moved. Hard. This moment felt like tipping the board. Knowing is one thing. When they feel it, that's different. Inside the venue I watched through tinted windows. A man I recognized from a hotel bar exchanged a USB drive with Lenora's father, a precise moment caught in motion. On the device, Maddox details _2023.pdf. My name. Twisted narrative. Financial drain. Opportunist. They used me as bait in their play. My stomach dropped. They weren't just rewriting my story, they were weaponizing it. I tapped Bernadette, they've moved. Reputation play. Her quick reply, I see it. Will Prep's story. I inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly. Betrayal sharpened into clarity. I wasn't their cover anymore. I would not let them define me. Later, I walked past my childhood home, end of the street, where laughter once filled the yard. The group chat pinged, invitation, charity gala. My name missing. Not a glitch. Intentional. I felt the same seat near the restroom all over again, except this time I wasn't sitting. I stood outside the boundary. The leaf-folded napkin in my coat pocket felt like armor. I whispered, no more seats at their table. I'll build my own. Back at the apartment I laid out the pieces, the fake contract, the reputation file, the group chats, the threats. On my corkboard I pinned sticky notes, accountant, silent board member, legal trail. I called Tom. We need the forensic audit completed by end of week. He agreed. Rain began to tap the windows again. Skyline lights blurred in water streaks. I looked at the world outside, quiet, ready for dawn. I closed the laptop. My reflection in the door's glass, a calm surface hiding a storm inside. They thought they could hide in shadows. I just walked into them. I walked through the double glass doors of the co-working space with nothing but a USB drive, a press folder under my arm, and a folded napkin in my pocket. The air inside crackled with anticipation, cameras being set up, reporters whispering, flashes testing their range. My heart was steady. Electric, but steady. It didn't pound with nerves anymore, it pulsed with clarity. On the back wall, a massive Harrow Events Grand Launch banner hung behind a polished podium. Beneath it stood Deacon Harrow, shaking hands, rehearsing charm. He didn't see me. Not yet. I didn't walk to the center. I moved to the media table and handed the USB to a local reporter with a calm nod. No need for a speech. I was here to pull the base from a house of cards. And they weren't ready. Inside, I reminded myself, this wasn't about revenge. It was reclamation. Of my name. My place. My dignity. I adjusted the napkin inside my coat pocket, a symbol of where I used to sit, now where I chose to stand. The moderator called Deacon up. But before he could speak, I stepped forward. No raised voice. Just, Good afternoon. I'm Rowena Maddox. All eyes turned. My voice didn't shake. The screen behind me lit up, contract files first. Then the manipulated Maddox details _2023 PDF. After that, a third document, independent audit results showing six-figure funds funneled into private accounts tied to Lucinda Voss and Deacon's holding company. You could hear the breath leave the room. Lucinda stiffened in her seat. Deacon looked like someone had unplugged him. I turned slightly and said, "Transparency is the currency of trust. This isn't about dirty secrets. This is about theft, wrapped in family dinners and legal footnotes." Whispers erupted. One journalist mouthed, "Oh my God." Another live tweeted, "Rowena Maddox just flipped the script on her own family." I left them with, "They built their empire on my silence. This is my voice." No applause. Just stunned, electric silence. I walked off. Didn't need clapping. That kind of silence that was louder. Outside, the sunlight was harsh. News vans already crowding the sidewalk. A reporter caught up to me. "Why now?" I looked straight into the camera, because truth can't wait. My phone buzzed nonstop. Screenshots. Messages. Headlines. One article read, "Groom's family empire faces legal firestorm." Another, "Audit confirms internal fraud." Resignations followed. The board began collapsing in real time. Another question thrown at me, "What about your emotional cost?" I smiled, small, not bitter. I'd rather be visible than invisible. I kept walking. I thought of that wedding. The restroom table. Where they sat me to keep me small. And now, I walked into traffic cameras and microphones. It wasn't the pyre that took them down, it was the match I lit. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again. Laptop open. Drafting a press release, not dramatic, just honest. I titled it, "Reclaiming Equity, Quietly Building Value." I folded the napkin into a leaf again and pinned it above my desk. This time, not as a reminder of where I sat, but as a bookmark. The start of something. Ping. A text. "Lenora. We need to talk." I stared at it. No typing bubble. No follow-up. I didn't reply. I shut the laptop. Turned the lock on my door. And whispered to myself, "You'll call again when you're ready to stop hiding." I walked through the double glass doors of the co-working space with nothing but a USB drive, a press folder under my arm, and a folded napkin in my pocket. The air inside crackled with anticipation, cameras being set up, reporters whispering, flashes testing their range. My heart was steady. Electric, but steady. It didn't pound with nerves anymore, it pulsed with clarity. On the back wall, a massive Harrow Events Grand Launch banner hung behind a polished podium. Beneath it stood Deacon Harrow, shaking hands, rehearsing charm. He didn't see me. Not yet. I didn't walk to the center. I moved to the media table and handed the USB to a local reporter with a calm nod. No need for a speech. I was here to pull the base from a house of cards. And they weren't ready. Inside, I reminded myself, this wasn't about revenge. It was reclamation. Of my name. My place. My dignity. I adjusted the napkin inside my coat pocket, a symbol of where I used to sit, now where I chose to stand. The moderator called Deacon up. But before he could speak, I stepped forward. No raised voice. Just, "Good afternoon. I'm Rowena Maddox." All eyes turned. My voice didn't shake. The screen behind me lit up, contract files first. Then the manipulated Maddox details _2023 PDF. After that, a third document, independent audit results showing six-figure funds funneled into private accounts tied to Lucinda Voss and Deacon's holding company. You could hear the breath leave the room. Lucinda stiffened in her seat. Deacon looked like someone had unplugged him. I turned slightly and said, "Transparency is the currency of trust. This isn't about dirty secrets. This is about theft, wrapped in family dinners and legal footnotes." Whispers erupted. One journalist mouthed, "Oh my God." Another live tweeted, "Rowena Maddox just flipped the script on her own family." I left them with, "They built their empire on my silence. This is my voice." No applause. Just stunned, electric silence. I walked off. Didn't need clapping. That kind of silence that was louder. Outside, the sunlight was harsh. News vans already crowding the sidewalk. A reporter caught up to me. "Why now?" I looked straight into the camera, because truth can't wait. My phone buzzed nonstop. Screenshots. Messages. Headlines. One article read, "Groom's family empire faces legal firestorm." Another, "Audit confirms internal fraud." Resignations followed. The board began collapsing in real time. Another question thrown at me, "What about your emotional cost?" I smiled, small, not bitter. I'd rather be visible than invisible. I kept walking. I thought of that wedding. The restroom table. Where they sat me to keep me small. And now, I walked into traffic cameras and microphones. It wasn't the pyre that took them down, it was the match I lit. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again. Laptop open. Drafting a press release, not dramatic, just honest. I titled it, "Reclaiming Equity, Quietly Building Value." I folded the napkin into a leaf again and pinned it above my desk. This time, not as a reminder of where I sat, but as a bookmark. The start of something. Ping. A text. "Lenora. We need to talk." I stared at it. No typing bubble. No follow-up. I didn't reply. I shut the laptop. Turned the lock on my door. And whispered to myself, "You'll call again when you're ready to stop hiding." The diner sat quiet in the early hours, the kind of quiet that felt earned. The smell of brewed coffee lingered in the air, and the soft sound of rain tapped against the windows. I sat in a corner booth by myself, the seat cracked from years of use, a steaming mug in front of me and my journal open to a blank page. The waitress called me Han as she poured another refill, the way small-town waitresses do when they can sense a story behind someone's eyes. There was no rush. No weight on my chest. Just thoughtfulness, like my body was still catching up with peace. I looked out the window toward Route 281, traffic beginning to hum to life. So much had changed in 72 hours. And yet, sitting there, I realized I had been changing for years. Every betrayal, every silence, every small cruelty, they'd been chiseling away at the version of me that tried to please everyone. What was left was quieter, smaller maybe, but real. They tried to break me at the wedding table, I thought, wrapping my hands around the mug. I built my own table. One with room for truth. The coffee steamed up toward my face. For once, I didn't feel lonely. I felt deliberate. Being alone wasn't a sentence anymore, it was a choice. I reached into my purse and unfolded a small photo, edges curled from age. Me, maybe 9, in a pastel dress that didn't quite fit, standing on the porch with a grin too wide for my face. I smiled at that girl. "You deserved better," I whispered. "And now you're going to get it, from me." Pulling my pen toward the journal, I wrote 3 simple goals: rebuild savings, start a women's support fund, publish the story. Underneath, I wrote a quote that had followed me for years but only made sense now: "Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different." Oprah. The word sat there like a key finally turning in a lock. I didn't need their apology. Their ruin wasn't my victory. The real closure was sitting here, grounded, breathing, no longer spinning inside their storm. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote the dedication line I'd been carrying in my head: "For the forgotten girls who refuse to stay small." When the waitress passed again, she smiled. "You look like you've made peace with something." "Maybe I finally have," I said. My phone buzzed beside the mug. I didn't check it right away. When I did, the screen showed her name, Lenora. The message was short: "I watched the video. You were right. I was complicit. I'm sorry." I read it once. Then again. Then I locked the screen and set the phone face down. Not out of anger. Just completion. Some wounds didn't need reopening, even for forgiveness to matter. I took a sip of coffee, still hot. The flavor was sharp, grounding. I opened my laptop, typed an email to my lawyer, confirming closure of all cases. No further action. Let the record speak. Then, I pulled a blank card from my bag. Addressed it to my niece. Wrote a few lines: "Trust your instincts. Don't let anyone convince you that silence is strength. Speak, even when your voice shakes." I signed it, sealed it, and slid it beside the sugar packets for mailing later. The waitress brought my check, smiled softly. "Whatever you're working through, hon, you're doing just fine." "I think I finally am," I said, leaving a 20 under the saucer. Outside, the morning smelled like oak and wet pavement. I walked to my truck, air cool on my face. As I started the engine, a podcast began playing automatically, voices of women telling stories of survival and truth. I let it play. "You're not alone anymore," I said quietly to no one in particular. The road stretched ahead, long and clean under the rising sun. The napkin, folded into that same leaf shape, sat on the dashboard. I smoothed its edge and smiled. Once it had been a mark of humiliation. Now it was a keepsake of endurance. "Let the wedding memory fade," I said under my breath. "Let the woman I became stand." The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I stared at it. Once, I would have answered without thinking. Now I just let it ring. The sound faded into the hum of the highway. The horizon opened wide. The world moved on, and so did I.